Welcome to the AI+HI Project. I'm Nichol Bradford, SHRM's Executive in Residence for AI+HI. Thanks for joining us. Each week, we sit down with visionaries from the world of business, tech, and HR to provide deep insights, actionable strategies, and practical advice for harnessing the transformative potential of AI combined with human ingenuity. This week, we're exploring how cutting-edge advancements in human-computer interaction, augmented reality, and wearable AI can apply to workplace transformation. Our guest is Dr. Pattie Maes, professor of media arts and sciences at the MIT Media Lab, where she leads the Fluent Interfaces Research Group. Dr. Maes's pioneering work focuses on developing technologies that augment human capabilities and enhance our quality of life. Today, we'll discuss how her expertise can help leaders and organizations think differently about the future of work. Dr. Maes, welcome to the AI+HI Project.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I've been to your offices at the MIT Media Lab a couple of times and have been really in awe of the work that you and your students have done. It's some of the most leading edge HCI work that's out there. And so thank you for coming.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so your work focuses on enhancing human potential through technology. What first inspired you to think about how technology can support and amplify human capabilities? Where did this journey start?
Yeah, so I studied computer science and specifically got a PhD in artificial intelligence way back in the 80s. And of course, at that time, Stanford and MIT were the two meccas for artificial intelligence research. And so soon after my PhD, I decided to join the AI laboratory at MIT and work with the founders of the field, people like Martin Minsky, for example, but also Rodney Brooks. And I worked there for a couple of years as a research scientist, developing machine learning algorithms that would teach robots to do more complicated behaviors and so on. And after a couple of years of being there, I realized, is this really what I want to devote my life to? Um, because at MIT, when you work here, you pretty much have to devote your entire life to your job. So I thought, is this really what I want to accomplish, really, and the impact that I want to have on the world? And instead, I started thinking, well, I'm more interested in helping people. I'm more interested in enabling people to sort of become smarter rather than teaching machines to become smarter and potentially replace us. So since the 1990s, I have been advocating for sort of AI that augments people and really helps them realize their potential. So I'm not anti AI at all, but I do believe that the current dominant stream of research and development in AI is still very much the one that I ran away from 30 years ago. There is still this strong emphasis on getting ever better models and soon also robots that can either match or surpass human capabilities. Instead, I have for the same 30 years been looking at how some of these same technologies can actually help people with realizing their potential, with becoming sort of a better version of themselves, a smarter version of themselves. So I've been working on both hardware, like wearables and VR, and how it can used in that sort of quest, but also software, of course, and how we can use the same types of machine learning algorithms that are enabling all these wonderful advances in AI. How can we use those, but turn them around and really in service of helping people with learning, with memory, with well being, with decision making and reasoning, and so on.
So timely. to talk to you because our audience of HR leaders and executives are really on the front lines of bringing AI into organizations, and they're struggling with the exact same things that you mentioned. And so, could you speak to how you see AI complementing collaboration and well-being in the workplace?
Yes. So AI is being marketed as this performance enhancer, something that will make the employees in the workplace more efficient and more capable of taking on tasks that they previously weren't able to, etc. But a lot of our studies and also studies by other people show that when you give a person an AI to assist them in their workflow, their performance doesn't necessarily increase. We have done studies that show that people, when they have an AI readily available at their fingertips, they basically overly rely on the AI, and they often rely on it in the wrong moments also to help them solve particular problems or say write particular answers to questions or essays, code, etc. So there is too much trust and over reliance on AI when AI is so easily, readily available. And that results in some that can, in the long term, result in de-skilling, in people actually losing or atrophying the skills that they have, their programming skills, um, their skills in writing or whatever it is that they do. So we are very concerned about that as AI basically advances and becomes more intelligent, more capable, that maybe the opposite is happening as well. And people sort of over the long term, when they rely on these systems, will actually be less capable. And that is, I think, worrisome for companies. We do these studies both with involving a lot of human subjects, basically, but we also we look at their performance, but we also look at their brain signals. So we've done studies of people working with ChatGPT or with Copilot, and we actually observe what is going on in their brain. And those studies as well confirm our other findings that people actually don't think as hard. Their own brain isn't being used in the same way when they have AI available. They basically do less sort of critical thinking because they overly rely on the AI to just do the thinking for them. So if I were a company, a CEO, I would be worried about that. I would be worried about the long-term consequences of de-skilling and also long-term consequences of people relying on AI and no longer exploring new solutions to problems, new ways of doing things. Um, a similar study that we showed, for example, that we did, for example, showed that if people use ChatGPT to help them with writing essays, they write great essays. However, they explore less diversity of opinion and thought because everybody writes similar essays when they have ChatGPT available. We compared a group using ChatGPT with a group using search and a group using just their own brain. And even though the ChatGPT users came up with very nice essays, we learned that all of their essays kind of looked very similar, while the group of people, of human subjects in the study that used their own brain, they had the most originality. They were exploring different points of view on the essay topic that we gave them, etc. We also studied these same people 2 weeks later, And we learned that the group that used ChatGPT, some of them didn't even recognize the same prompt. We gave them the same essay to write, the same prompts. We used SAT essay topics actually. And they didn't even recognize that it was the same one that they had like written an essay for 2 weeks earlier because ChatGPT had done all the work for them. So I
Yeah.
am worried about these effects on people's potential, people's skills and knowledge of relying too much on these AI systems.
Yes, I call that my layman's term for it is the great samification. It's like if you can tell, like I can tell when I'm talking or working with someone about something if they've actually done the deep thought for it or if it's very surface level. So, from a writing standpoint, it won't be your worst work, but it also won't be your best. Like there's this, giant middle that it causes. But I want to double click on something. One of the things that we're seeing in organizations is that there's there's companies that are actually redesigning their workflows and there's companies that are not. And so I wonder if what you're speaking to is that for people who are just doing productivity, like, it's just do the same thing faster, then the composition, the task composition of those jobs and those roles doesn't move into that other space. Like as a researcher, you're always looking at the expanded problem, or an entrepreneur is, always has a never-ending list of things to do to expand their solutions and offerings. And so I wonder if part of what would address that to help AI become the intelligence augmentation is for the workflows and the jobs to actually evolve, so that people are more focused on solving new problems. And I wonder if that would affect it because I share the same
Mhm.
I share the same concern.
Yeah. I think we also have to think about, I agree. And I think we also have to think about the specific context of where we are using AI because it's clear that there is no one size fits all best UI or interaction experience for AI. In some contexts, maybe it's okay if the person doesn't develop their own skills, but in other contexts, it's very important that a person still um, basically gets better at doing things and doesn't completely sort of rely on AI to do everything for them. So yeah, it's very important that we look at the particular context. And we have shown in some design work that we do, because we don't just do studies to show like the dangers of interacting with AI and overly relying on it, but we also build new prototypes and come up with solutions. And some of the solutions may involve simply having the AI engage the user in thinking about a problem before it gives its answer. So instead of an AI just giving you your whole 5 paragraph essay that you're asked to write, maybe it first engages you in an interaction, a conversation about a topic, making you think also about a topic, coming up with some original angles and ideas that you want to explore in your essay and so on. So I think there's much more sophisticated designs of user experiences that we can come up with that really encourage people to still be engaged in the problem and in the work that they're doing, and really so you can really benefit from the intelligence of AI and the knowledge of AI, as well as the intelligence and maybe the creativity of people.
Does voice help? Do you think that voice interfaces are better especially if they can have that back and forth?
Um, I guess voice is a little bit easier to have back and forth than texting, but we haven't really looked at whether it helps with people being more engaged. We've looked at it in another context. We look not just at quality of decision making and so on, but also the risk of attachment to bots and people sort of decreasing their engagement with other people, including in the workplace with their colleagues and so on, as they rely increasingly on chatbots as sort of the ones to work with. And in that case, we have looked at voice, but the interesting thing was that it was actually the text based interfaces that led to more um, almost attachment even to the chatbots than the voice based interfaces.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's unexpected.
I
Well,
know we were assuming that people would get more attached, sort of and addicted, so to speak, to a voice-based chatbot. And we actually we did a big study that is about to come out. It's actually funded by OpenAI. Um, I mean, just to give you a sort of a sneak preview, it seems that the text-based conditions are actually leading to more sort of maybe unhealthy use of AI than the voice-based ones. I think because they leave a lot of aspects still to the imagination, sort of. You don't have one personality of, say, a bot that you can get tired of or just isn't sort of your style of maybe it's not your style to have this perky or collaborator, AI collaborator. Um, so yeah, maybe people are just a little bit more critical of the choice in voice and the personality and so on, while a lot of that is left to the imagination when you use text.
one of the areas where what you're working on also is so relevant is that we're moving from the basic chat features into agents. And where, the next 12 to 14 months, it's going to be agent, agent, agent. And so as organizations are thinking about the future of work, how should we be thinking about AI-driven interfaces?
Yeah, so it's an area that I've also been working on for a very long time. And I think the interface design issues when it comes to agents are even more critical and more difficult to solve than in the case of chatbots. You just have to think about how you work with human agents and maybe delegate tasks to people on a team. For example, I got a new administrative assistant at the end of the summer, and I don't, I have to sort of form a theory of what that person is like and what they're good at and not so good at, etc., over time. So initially, I want to be sort of very involved in and almost maybe micromanage as they do things, schedule trips on my behalf, make choices for hotels and this and that. But over time, I will form a more predictive model of how my assistant acts and maybe the things that they just never will be good at and the things that they are great at. And so I know what to delegate, how to delegate, how much involvement to still have, etc., in what he's doing. But in the case of agents, I am concerned that they are harder to predict. They have less consistency in their behavior. If my human assistant, say, is great at picking restaurants and hotels and so on for my travel needs, then he's probably consistent in that task. But I'm worried that AI agents are not necessarily consistent. For one, actually, because they hallucinate still. So you may get like suddenly booked in a $1,000 a night hotel where normally you would expect your assistant to go for a lower price. Or some other things that we are showing in experiments is that these agents that use websites, whether it is via a vision technique or via the API for some of these websites, they get influenced by different nudges on those web services than people do. So while a person may yeah, be affected by one type of marketing, or maybe the fact that something is on sale may make them go for it, etc. These agents are not necessarily biased in the same ways as people are. Of course, I think that web services like travel planning and so on, eventually, if there's a lot of bot interactions, they will, of course, start doing marketing for the bots so that the bots actually will pick certain choices that they want to push. But right now, they are primarily designed for people, and bots don't respond necessarily in the same ways as people do. To give you a concrete example,
Wow.
we just submitted a paper on a study where we had a system, a bot, basically evaluate candidates for job tasks, for job hiring for a job. And what we noticed is that the surname of the candidate had a huge impact on whether the bot would select a particular resume as being from a more promising candidate or not. They are very affected, it turns out, by last names that we associate with famous people like Gates or Kennedy, etc. And of course, when you have a human looking at all these resumes, I mean, they may also get a little bit biased when they see Kennedy on a resume. They may say, "Ooh, I wonder whether this is from the Kennedy clan or something." But at the same time, I think a person will still sort of think, well, I haven't heard of this person, or they don't seem to come from like the Massachusetts area, etc. This Kennedy probably doesn't have anything to do with the famous Kennedy family. So the fact that their name is Kennedy isn't going to necessarily make them any more promising than other candidates. So I think people still do much more critical thinking. They have more self awareness, basically. They reflect on their own reasoning and can notice that maybe that was dumb to think like Kennedy. Oh, that must be someone from an important family who may be a promising candidate. But these chat systems or these LLMs have, of course, been trained on a lot of data where Kennedy is always associated with at least success or with the person being famous, etc. So they get biased even more so than people are um, in this particular context. But there may be thousands or hundreds of thousands of simple examples like that that we are not thinking about, but that will nevertheless, in a big way, affect how those systems will help us with the work that we do, and they may be biased in these really dumb ways, basically, that we aren't even conscious of or aware of, or realize that we have to like be careful and keep an eye on them that they don't do it. Yeah.
Right. So the headline is that bots are biased, and they're biased in different ways than
Yes.
humans, and we don't know what all of those ways
Mhm.
are yet.
Mhm.
And so we're really sort of at the very beginning.
Yes.
Do the reasoning models help, or we actually just don't know?
They do help a little bit, yes. So we tested different models actually, not in that in the name study, but in a different study. And the Reasoning models do help. Of course, they're very costly still, although maybe no longer after the DeepSeek news. But yeah, they still don't solve the problem completely. I think the issue is that people have some self-awareness. They do reflect on their own processes. They know when they have more certainty or less certainty about a particular um, issue that they're dealing with, etc. And people don't, sorry, people have that, but these bots don't necessarily have this self awareness and this reflective capability always.
And so our audience are HR leaders and executives. And as I mentioned before, they are on the front lines of AI being brought into organizations. So, one of the things that HR leaders face are software that is sorting resumes. It sounds like the headline is add the word Kennedy to your name
Yes.
somewhere if you want to break through. But, and so, since we're at the very early innings and there's so much unknown, what are some of the practical things that an HR leader or executive who, is faced with software right now being sold to them or a lot of executive pressure to have something AI related happening in the organization? What should they do? How do they think
Yeah.
about this? They have to go to work on Monday and figure it out. What would be your advice to them?
I I think they should still explore, of course, the uses of AI in their organization because again, I'm not against AI, and I think there are amazing opportunities for making an organization perform better and more efficiently. However, they should tread very carefully, I think, because they have to keep in mind that this is really the Wild West, sort of. We're doing a lot of experiments, and you really need to do a lot of testing and supervising and monitoring the situation to really keep track of what effects, what consequences there may be in the longer term.
One of the things we see in organizations that have been successful in bringing in AI, and successful is defined as they have multiple pilots that have transformed into scalable initiatives that are starting to show a positive ROI impact for the organization. And one of the things that many of these types of organizations have is they have a good relationship with their employees about what they're doing. The employees are a part of it, and their AI governance slash responsible AI is not something that it's not one and done. It's a very iterative process, and the employees are giving feedback nonstop. Do you think like maybe that's the only way to
Yeah.
to respond to just how much we don't know?
I completely agree with that recommendation. I think it's important to tread very carefully and iteratively, do a lot of experimenting, monitoring what happens, and as you say, involve the employees and the people that are going to be working with these systems, get their buy in, get their feedback. Do experiments and see what happens because people may still say, well, I'm not going to overly trust this or I'll still be very careful, etc. But they may not actually keep doing that, of course, when they can process so much more work, when they just always say, like, yes, I accept your suggestion or whatever. Um, so I think it's important to sort of do these iterative experiments with a lot of checks to make sure that the AI is integrated in a way that ultimately, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well, will lead to success and will also make the employees ultimately uh, better off, will develop them in the ways that we want to develop them, and will enable them to really do their best work.
Yes. And one of the other things I'm taking away from this conversation is, well, just to set something up. So I think the number one survival skill in the age of AI is adaptability, and the number one thriving skill is ideation, because it used to be that it was 20% ideation and then 80% was really could you build and operate. And I think the agents and what we're moving into, it's going to flip to 80% ideation, and and the creativity and expanding the problem space, as a scientist does, while 20% is going to be the operation and building. And so I think what I'm taking away from this, especially the dangers that you mentioned about people really going on autopilot, is that adapting the workflows, transforming the work, like the future of work is we have to actually transform the work, so that the part of work really is that ideation, not only with technologies but with your peers, that becomes sort of like the value added, always interesting. And we have to actually transition into that, because it's going to be too easy to autopilot.
Yes, I fully agree with that assessment.
And that's it for this week's episode of the AI+HI Project. A big thank you to Dr. Maes for sharing your groundbreaking research and helping us to reimagine how AI and human-computer interaction will shape the future of work, as well as the things that we should be aware of. Before we wrap up, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI Project wherever you enjoy your podcast. If you found today's episode valuable, please take a moment to comment, leave a review, and help spread the word. You can find all of our episodes on our website at shrm.org/AIHI. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll catch you next time.
SHRM.